President Zelensky has declared that Ukraine will continue extending the range of its strikes on Russian territory. This is not merely a statement of military capability, it is a fundamental shift in how a smaller power fights a larger empire. The real stakes involve whether Kyiv can disrupt the Russian war machine's economic backbone without triggering a wider NATO-Russia confrontation. By the end of this analysis, you will understand why these long-range strikes are less about destroying tanks and more about weaponizing distance to force a strategic recalibration in Moscow. For the first 2 years of this conflict, the narrative was dominated by defensive attrition. The world watched as Ukrainian forces held the line against massive Russian armored columns. The strategy was simple and brutal. Trade space for time. Use every available weapon to hold the front line and bleed the enemy dry. But as the war dragged on, a new reality emerged. Russia's industrial base proved remarkably resilient. Factories in the Urals kept churning out tanks and artillery shells. Supply lines deep inside Russian territory remained surprisingly intact. The initial assumption that the front would collapse under the weight of attrition failed to materialize. This failure forced a strategic pivot. Kyiv needed a way to strike at the source of the enemy's resilience, without engaging in a direct confrontation that could escalate beyond control. Here is the thing about modern warfare. The battlefield is no longer just a line of trenches. It is a global network of supply chains, energy grids, and financial flows. When Ukraine extends the range of its strikes, it is not just hitting a target on a map, it is hitting the logistical arteries that keep the Russian war effort alive. The goal is to disrupt the flow of goods, fuel, and equipment from the interior of Russia to the front lines. This is a move from tactical engagement to strategic economic targeting. Consider the mechanics of this shift. For years, Ukraine relied on short-range artillery and drones to harass Russian positions near the border. These tools were effective for local defense but useless against the deep storage depots that kept the Russian army supplied. Those depots were often hundreds of kilometers behind the front line, safely out of reach. Now, with longer-range capabilities, Ukraine can reach those critical nodes. The target is no longer just the soldier in the trench. The target is the truck carrying the ammunition, the train carrying the fuel, the factory producing the drone parts. Quick resource note, I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. This approach changes the incentives for the Russian command structure. When supply lines are threatened deep in the rear, the cost of maintaining the offensive increases dramatically. Resources must be diverted from the front to defend the interior. Security forces must be pulled from the border to protect critical infrastructure. This creates a feedback loop. The more Ukraine strikes deep, the more Russian resources are consumed by defense rather than offense. It forces Moscow to fight a war on two fronts, the physical front in Ukraine and the logistical front inside Russia itself. However, this strategy is not without significant risks. Extending strike range requires advanced weaponry, often provided by Western allies. This creates a dependency on external support. If that support wavers, the entire strategy collapses. Furthermore, there is the constant threat of escalation. Russia has repeatedly warned that attacks on its territory could lead to a broader conflict. Every strike that crosses the border is a calculated gamble. Kyiv must walk a fine line between effective disruption and triggering a response that could end the war before it achieves its goals. The research into this conflict reveals that this military pivot is deeply intertwined with a broader digital warfare ecosystem. The announcement of extended strike ranges is not just a tactical signal, it is a critical component of what analysts call memetic warfare. In the fog of war, information is as valuable as ammunition. The narrative that Ukraine can strike deep into Russia serves to maintain global support and boost domestic morale. It projects an image of a resilient force that is not merely surviving but actively shaping the battlefield. This dual-purpose approach is where the true strategic genius lies. By leveraging Zelensky's persona and the announcement of long-range capabilities, Kyiv creates a narrative that is difficult for Russia to counter. It forces Moscow to address a threat that is invisible and unpredictable. The effectiveness of this strategy relies on the belief that Ukraine can sustain this technological edge. It is a bet on rapid innovation and external support rather than static advantages. Now consider the limitations. The push for extended strike capabilities highlights a dependency on continuous technological breakthroughs. There is no guarantee that these advantages will hold. The information battle has faced unexpected setbacks. Deepfake technology and disinformation campaigns have made it harder to verify claims on the ground. The consensus among researchers is that the conflict has become a social media war where emotional and factual narratives are weaponized. In this environment, the success of long-range strikes depends as much on the story told about them as on the missiles themselves. The most valuable insight here is that the extension of strike range is not an end in itself. It is a tool to reshape the strategic landscape. By disrupting Russian supply chains, Ukraine is attempting to make the cost of the war unsustainable for Moscow. This is a shift from fighting for territory to fighting for the enemy's will to continue. It treats the war as a contest of endurance and economic capacity rather than just a contest of firepower. This strategy requires a level of coordination and precision that was unimaginable at the start of the conflict. It demands that every strike be justified not just militarily but strategically. The goal is to create a cumulative effect where the sum of many small disruptions leads to a large-scale breakdown. It is a slow, grinding process that relies on patience and persistence. The dependency on external support remains the single biggest vulnerability. Without the continued flow of advanced weaponry and intelligence, this strategy cannot be sustained. The window of opportunity is narrow. Ukraine must achieve its strategic objectives before the political will in the West erodes. This makes every strike a high-stakes gamble. Ultimately, the extension of strike range represents a new phase in the Russo-Ukrainian war. It moves the conflict from a static line of defense to a dynamic campaign of disruption. It challenges the traditional assumptions about how smaller powers can fight larger empires. It suggests that in the modern age, the ability to strike deep and disrupt supply chains can be just as decisive as holding the front line. The outcome will depend on whether Ukraine can maintain this momentum and whether Russia can adapt to this new reality. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.